So, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Wholeness with Sandra. So, Sandra from Blue Pool, and with me. And each week we explore different topics based on wellness, esoteric topics. And this week we're going to be talking all about reprogramming. And so, let me just hand you over to the wonderful Sandra, who can start this wonderful conversation.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Jade. So thank you for the introduction. Um, where to start with reprogramming? It's a huge topic because it has we all have so many programs that we're running which are not aligned with our truth. And I guess the question is, why is that? Why does that happen? Why do we end up not aligned with our truth? And how can we change that? Because and it all really starts with our childhood. So it starts at the point that we have different brainwave states up until the age of when we're up until the age of 2. We're in what's called delta brainwave state, which is basically like the sleep state, which is why babies sleep a lot, is because their brainwaves don't actually go beyond that state of frequency. And brainwaves are all about the frequency at which the waves are um, it's the gap between, so it's the speed of the actual waves. When you actually look at it on a graph, you'll see these different waves, and they are wider or smaller depending on the speed of the brain
And do we
waves.
spend most of our time in alpha? Is that the optimal brainwave state to be residing
Yeah,
in alpha?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you're in alpha wave state, then that's something where we're really the sort of more super conscious state.
When I've done the
Um,
bioresonance, that's where mine was mostly in.
which is great because it's in that space where you want to be, where you're focused, but you're not in that beta wave state, which is very activated. When you're thinking, you're concentrating, when you're working. Like now, we're probably in a beta wave state because that's that focused intention. Whereas if you're more just relaxing and you're just chatting, but you're in an aligned space, you're more likely to be in that alpha wave state.
Mm.
But as a child, our brains haven't developed to that point where we actually have that part of our brain activated. So up until the age of 7 or 8, and it's different with each child, we have the children stay in the theta wave state, which is a bit more. As an adult, you'd experience that as your imagination, or when you're meditating, or when you're in that sort of just drifting off to sleep and you're just daydreaming. That's that sort of space, and in there is no there's no rational thinking in terms of um, choosing to do something because that part of your brain is saying, for example, that's not true, so I don't believe that, I'm going to think something else. So up until that age, children are totally in there, as we were talking about just now, totally in that subconscious. And it means that so much they're literally wide open to programming. And so if you've got a child who is, say, for example, you've got a little girl and they're told, and she's boisterous and noisy and annoying her parents, and they're saying, little girls shouldn't behave like this. You should be quiet. You should be a good little girl and you should be playing with your dollies. Then that's programming that child to be different to how they naturally are. And so they will feel unsafe because they get told off. And so therefore they will create a version of themselves which is then approved of by their parents, by their school, whatever the environment is, but it's all about approval, being safe, secure, loved, and heard. And so that's how these identities are created.
Mm. Yeah, and it's the kind of model that I assist people with when we go into hypnotherapy. It's just understanding your subconscious mind, purely subconscious until you're 8, and then after that, that's when your conscious mind um came on board. And in the program that I teach and what I trained in, you look at your mind like a ship, and I'll share that in this actually. So you look at your mind like a ship, and you have all the crew members on the ship that are your subconscious part of your mind. And so they're the ones that are sailing the ship, have all the roles, they're already doing what they're doing. And then so when you have the captain that comes on board later on when you're 8, they're actually already doing all the of their things that they're doing, and so they're outdated. So then the captain will come on board, your conscious mind be like, not sure if I agree with that, or I want this, or I want to change it that way. But actually whatever formed our map of reality when we were younger has already started to really build up those roles of what those crew members are doing. So that's why then we have to talk directly to those crew members, to our subconscious, and rewrite what they're doing and give them a new role. And it's always nice just to understand that our subconscious is always doing what it thinks best. It's always for our safety and protection. It's never against us. That's why I say that the crew members are never trying to sink the ship. And it can feel like that. I know with me, my mind felt like it was completely against me. I actually remember the moment when I had this realization, and it was actually super, super hard. It makes me really emotional thinking about it, because I remember crying to my brother, really emotional, saying like, I feel like my mind is against me and I feel like it actually wants to kill me. That's how it really felt. Really sensitive today, because we were doing a lot of work yesterday.
Yes, so yeah, I can understand why people are sensitive today. It was a very heavily energetic day yesterday, and as a result of that, it brings everything to the surface, and holding energy for others also helps it reflects back to us. So then we're holding that space, and it starts to as we're clearing for other people, we're also clearing it for ourselves. So
yeah. But yeah,
continue.
Yeah, okay? Absolutely. Yeah, it's just, you know, you don't really say these things out loud, and then when you do, you're like, wow, that is actually really hard. And that's why when I do this work with people, and you help someone understand that actually you can really just work with your own mind and feel empowered by your own mind. And I mean, now obviously it was really bad, but now I feel like I have so much control of my mind. I understand who I am and then what my thoughts are completely now. Whereas before I didn't know the difference. I actually lived in a state of a complete daydream, where my mind was just running the show, where I'd even be daydreaming bad things happening in my mind. And so it's super amazing work. And it's not, the wonderful thing is it neuroplasticity, or we can really make those shifts quite quickly when we start doing this work. It's not something that has to be this long slog. Like, once our mind has a new idea and a belief that actually goes, oh, I like that, or that could work for me, we can take it on board like that and we can shift.
Yeah, it's such a powerful process, and it is totally life-changing. Yeah. And I completely hear you. And there's a moment where you suddenly realize, and when you suddenly realize, and you're looking at it and you start to observe your thoughts as they're coming up, and you can see there's a difference between you as the conscious part of yourself and your thoughts, which are in misalignment. Then you start to hear the patterns in your thinking. And I remember I was a mum at the time. I was probably had two children that were I think probably one would have been about 4 or 5, and the other one would have been about 11 or 12, something like that. And I remember listening to myself saying things to them and thinking, I'm my mum. I don't even believe that or think that what I've just said. It's just, I'm on autopilot. I've just totally taken on that as that's just what you do. That is what you say in that scenario. And then I had to look at how I was parenting and how I would have responded to things. And I started to recognize when the words were coming out of my mouth that were totally unconscious and just coming from a part of myself, which was learned behavior from when I was probably about 5. So, and this is what we don't realize, is that we then continue those patterns into our own parenting. And that can be totally unconscious. And that's happened now it's only now that we're starting to be more aware of this stuff. And so if you think back, we've been handing this down generation after generation after generation, all of these bad patterns. And we've now got this amazing opportunity to start to become conscious and start to be aware and make a choice and realize that there is, and it's something that I remember from when I was very young, actually. I was probably about 13 or 14, and having a conversation with my dad. And I said to him, we were talking about whether there was life after death, that sort of conversation. And my dad said to me, what do you think? And I remember being in the car on the way home from somewhere and having this chat. We used to have these deep and meaningful conversations.
So this is where it started with you. They're really
deep. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, he took me to transcendental meditation, and there's all sorts of things that went on with my dad. It was quite interesting. He was a very, very interesting man, and had a very very interesting way of looking at the world, very open for his generation. I mean, if he'd have been alive now, because he passed 10 years ago, but he would have been just coming up to 100.
Mm.
So, in fact, I think he would have been 100. It would have been 100, I think, in 2 years' time. So, for his generation, he was very advanced in his thinking.
And that must have actually um had a huge benefit to who you are now, and having that ability to be open-minded and think deeply about things. You can see
Mm.
even like the good things that you pick up on as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is the thing, it's not all bad, because obviously
Yeah.
we were also absorbing really positive influences. And because my dad was always one of those people that was very expansive thinking, he worked from himself. He had his first heart attack when he was 48. And he, from his hospital bed, just basically went, right, well, I need to start a business then, because clearly this doing what I was doing isn't working for me. And he set himself up as an insurance broker from, he was been in bed for 6 weeks, and then he went off on his own and created a really successful business. So I had that entrepreneurial
Yeah.
scenario around me, and these conversations that we used to have. And this particular one was when he said to me, so what do you think about life after death? And I said, well, I think there has to be, because I can observe myself watching my thoughts.
Mhm.
So
How old are
and
you?
about 14. I said, because I know that I'm here watching something. So who is that? It's like, I'm not here just as I'm just not just here. I'm here observing myself being here. And I didn't really understand at the time what that meant. It was just something that I thought, oh, that's interesting. But I couldn't understand or accept the possibility that consciousness didn't continue. So it was always been something that was a really strong belief within me.
Mm.
Um, but it's a conversation that I have had a lot of times with people about, and it's certainly something that I talk to clients about, is being the watcher of your thoughts. And when you start to have this awareness of there is a separation between you and your thoughts, it gives you power and control over how you can shift and change that, because you're not caught up in it. You can separate yourself from it, and that's when you can start to really shift and change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like I didn't, I mean, up until, I don't know, 20 something, I still thought that when you I believe that when you died, it's just like you were dead in the ground. That was it. Like, I didn't pick up any expansive beliefs when I was younger. And I know that might sound really sad, but like I honestly didn't. I feel like it was literally, that's why being connected to your higher self and source, like honestly, that's what's just taught me everything. It's like I've learned from something, not from anyone else. It's just been from this kind of high knowing that's coming to save me, and this, yeah, a feeling, intuitive feeling that's taken me to these places and explored. And I didn't actually do hypnotherapy of anyone else myself. Like I trained in that after, because the journey I went on with discovering how to work my own subconscious and reprogramming, I was like, how do I translate this to others? Like, I knew I wanted to help people with anxiety and obviously the somatic work and the regulation, but in terms of the hypnotherapy, I didn't have the conscious understanding of what I was doing. So it sounds like you did from a very young age explore that. So it's probably why you're really good at being analytical and explaining things more than I am. Yeah.
Well, I think you do a very good job of explaining it. So,
More the body stuff. We know the mind. You're
yeah,
you're more like the subconscious
the
mind.
subconscious and the mind I've
Yeah.
always had a fascination for it, but it wasn't always that way, because although I had that awareness when I was sort of 13, 14, it sort of I sort of forgot and just went on to do what you do when you're young, and you just get on with your life. Um, and also was holding a lot of quite negative programming, because of the fact that the school I went to was a convent. So it was very much, you have to do this, and you're not, and mine was very much about being the good girl. And so if I did I had this idealistic view of who I should be, which obviously wasn't really in alignment to the truth of who I really am. And so I completely shut down whole parts of myself because they were shameful and wrong. I made a lot of myself wrong, which caused a lot of problems in my 20s. And then it was probably in my very early 30s. I think, in fact, it was probably my late 20s, early 30s, that I actually got to the point where my mind was so against me, was working so much against me, that I was having panic attacks all the time. I was really struggling to the point where for 2 years I barely left the house.
And it
I
comes through in
couldn't
your
do it.
body, doesn't it? That's the same as me.
Mm,
That's when, like, my anxiety, I didn't even really clock on what was going on in my mind, but my body told me before I understood what was going on in my mind. And that's the wonderful thing, that we have this body that can communicate to us
yeah,
and it's connected. So, we can definitely work with that. It's interesting how, even though you had those expansive beliefs and understandings when you're younger, really what forms our reality even more growing up is just the need to be accepted, to be loved, to be approved of. And
totally.
because that's what feels like we need that to survive. So anything that we feel like we need to survive, we will have those beliefs to support that. So whether
Exactly.
it's unsafe to go out to that situation, or go to that, or with me, public speaking, being seen, very unsafe. I totally had that belief that it was really unsafe. And they're the things that we have to override now. So really, that's why the work that I do, I don't know your perspective on that, but I want to look at what are the barriers, the objections, the obstacles in the way. If you know what you want your subconscious to understand, and you're saying, okay, can you understand that it's safe to go and talk in public, everyone's gonna receive it well. If you want that and it's not doing that, well, why? What's in the way of that? What's those objections, obstacles? And they're the things that you want to start to kind of reason with, and even bargain with, and be like, okay, can we just meet in the middle here? I know it was unsafe when we were younger, but no, this is really going to help us get to where we want to go. And that's that process, isn't it? To
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's a process, and it takes a long time. And I think this process for me probably started around that time, about 30 years ago, because I tried so many different things to try and help how I was feeling, but I had such intrusive thoughts that if I could have done at the time, I would have just done anything. I wanted to just to hit my head, just stop
Mhm.
the thoughts being so loud. It was just horrendous. And I did all sorts of different therapies. Nothing was working. And what shifted me was hypnotherapy. So it was 2 years, and I tried all sorts of different things. I've been on antidepressants, nothing had made a difference. I went to hypnotherapy. I had 6 sessions of hypnotherapy, and I was completely back to normal. And so, of course, what that did was obviously got to sort of certain layers of trauma that I needed to release and reprogram. Um, but then I've always had that real understanding that reprogramming the subconscious mind was super powerful for shifting so many things. And it's not just as we were talking about, the body really gives us information. So it's not just shifting things on a mindset level, because it has an impact on your physical health. Because when I started to have the panic attacks, the precursor to that was I kept losing my voice.
Mm.
So it was showing up in a physical way in my body. So mine was all about not speaking up, not being heard, and that sort of block in my throat chakra and I'd been having those sort of issues for probably 10 years. And then it got to the point where I was losing my voice about every 2 weeks. So this was getting ridiculous. So there was such an imbalance. But of course, the hypnotherapy reprogrammed my mind enough to be able to then be functional. But of course, you have layers and layers and layers of these fractured parts of yourself, because every time we have a situation when we're a child, which makes us feel unsafe, we will in that moment have almost like a Polaroid and a separation. So there's a part of us that will stay at that age, um, unless it's reprogrammed. So if something happens to you which makes you unsafe when you're 5, this is why when you're an adult and somebody says something to you which isn't actually really that bad, but it triggers a memory of that emotion of being 5, you respond to it as the 5-year-old. You're not responding to it as the adult. You're responding to it as the version of you that you were then. And we can be so unconscious of these triggers that we think that the other person is being unreasonable, and the other person is standing there looking at you as if you've completely overreacted, and we can't see it. And it's because we've reacted. It's completely valid from the perspective we're seeing it at, because we're protecting that 5-year-old. That 5-year-old self is not wanting to feel that pain again.
Yeah.
And so it's jumping up and going, no, 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 I know that makes me feel unsafe. So I'm going to respond to that action, even though it's completely disproportionate to you as a 30-year-old,
Mm.
50-year-old adult. So it's interesting how
Yeah,
it comes up like that.
that's why, it really comes to emotions, really, like trauma. Like I really see it as like when you were younger and you experience this energy, this emotion, 'cause that's what emotion is in your body, and it was too overwhelming, you didn't have someone to kind of regulate and calm you down. It's like you freeze, it freezes within your body, and it freezes like, and so it's, and then when you get that trigger, it's like it's happening again within your body. It's like you're transported back to that same time. And that's why, all the modalities that you do, like inner child work, somatic therapy, you really do go back to the point where you go, where did you learn this? If you're following that emotion in your body, where did you learn this? And your body will tell you. And then the memory, hopefully, most of the time it does come into your awareness, and you're like, oh, then that's when this happened. And that's when you can go, okay, well, let's give you that missing experience and come out with a new belief. So yeah, emotions is just the main factor of that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, because we're holding that all on a cellular level, and so we are responding. Our whole body remembers everything, even if we don't consciously remember ourselves. There's nothing within this lifetime and in our unconscious, within other lifetimes, in our ancestral line, we have all of that unconscious information that we're responding from. And so our bodies have all of that information that's held within our DNA, in our cells. And so anything that happens in our outer experience is all there for us to be able to respond. And our body is the thing that is actually what responds first. So it's we think that it's our mind that's responding, but it's actually all coming from that emotional response within our body that dictates how we respond from the mind.
Yeah.
And everything happens in such a split second, but it's our bodily response which will really have an impact. So if somebody says something to us that does trigger us, we immediately have that feeling, and it's because our body has just gone into that state, in that space again. And because that part of ourselves wants to keep us safe, it will have that extreme reaction. So this is where we can start to negotiate with those parts and do the parts work, or which Jade and I went to see Teal Swan a few weeks ago, and she's the master of parts work. So
Loved
um,
it.
mm,
Yeah.
it's such powerful work when you can actually start to talk to those parts of yourself. So a therapist can talk to that part and help you to have those conversations, but you can have those conversations within yourself. You can bring those parts up and have those internal dialogues with them to negotiate, so that they can just calm down, and you can talk to them and basically tell them, you're making me feel unsafe because you're not now. I know you're trying to protect me, and I love you and thank you for doing that and for supporting me. But actually, can you just calm it down a little bit? Because when you do that, it makes me feel like this, and that doesn't make me feel safe either. So you can just have those discussions and those negotiations with those parts of yourself.
Yeah, and the capacity of our mind to do that, because even when I do this now, like when I learn about Teal's technique about sitting in the chair, I don't even need to do that. It's like I'm just sitting here and it's all happening in my head.
Yeah.
That's how powerful it is. You can just do everything from this space here. You don't even need to like, do the whole, yeah. And it also, it shows you as well, some people, it really helped me tap into the expansiveness of my mind, because I was such a daydreamer. My imagination was so huge that actually, when you tap into it in the right way, you're like, wow, I have the power. And actually, when I've had worked with energy here, so like the capacity of your mind is really expansive. So it's understanding, like, are we operating from that mental field? Sometimes sometimes we're disconnected our body, we're more in our body. Sometimes we're really good at accessing the mental field. So it depends. And with that as well, do you feel like how things we tap into that our soul might know, or higher knowledge, is that separate to our subconscious completely? It's not even something we're holding in our subconscious that's coming, because is our subconscious purely from when we were born? What's your perspective on that?
What's my perspective? That's an interesting one, actually. It's interesting. So I think our subconscious holds certain information within our I think we have a certain amount of information that's held in our physical body.
I feel like
And our physical body is a temporary state that doesn't necessarily hold everything, but we have access to it through parts of our body. So, for example, I feel like we can connect to more of our truth through our heart space.
Yeah.
But within our subconscious, within our cellular memory, in our physical body, I feel like it's more of our current lifetime that we're holding, although we hold information within our DNA from our genetics, from the ancestral lines. So I feel that there's information that we're bringing in from our previous soul experiences within our DNA, but tapping into higher consciousness, I feel that we access through a portal.
Mm. Yeah, that's how I interpret that.
Mm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
That's good. So,
Because it's interesting to know, isn't it? Like, new channeling is
yeah.
always a fascinating topic that, you know, even when you ask some people don't really understand where it comes from. You know,
Mm.
how we're necessarily doing that. But I think the more that we cover all parts, so be more in tune with our body, being able to tune into our mind, distinguishing our thoughts from our core self and our intuition, it's that whole process. I think if you're learning to channel that, it's not one thing or the other, it's learning to just become more just aware of what is the core element of you, and not something that you've learned and your human self in this lifetime that you picked up on. And that's the whole
Yeah.
journey that we're
It is
yeah.
totally. And the other thing that comes to mind is that although I feel that we access it through our hearts, and this is something that I've been working on, trying to understand. So it's a bit of a work in work in progress, and trying to understand it. But I feel that everything is the macrocosm and the microcosm, and we, as the human in our incarnation, are the microcosm. Every cell in our body is a microcosm. We hold the universe within us. So the question is where, how, and I think we access the information through our heart space, but we're interpreting it through our mind. So where in our mind are we actually taking that information from? And my sense is that there is a part of the mind, and there is actually a space within, right in the center of our mind, there is a space. And it is where there is a cross of where the light comes in. If you think about the chakras, you're going through the center of your. If you take a cross section, there is a line that goes in between, in the middle, right between all of the. Well, you've got the words out because I'm trying to
It makes
throw the
sense.
information in. You've got a cross there where you've got the third eye, and then you've got a center within the third eye. And within the brain, there is actually a space. There is an empty space right in the center of the brain. And my sense is that that's an energetic center, which is actually the quantum field. So the access to all information is actually in a part of our mind.
And do we access
So
that through our third eye? Because when I go into third eye, I feel like that's when you feel the space and you can start. Is that
yes.
space takes you? Yeah. Okay.
And there is a physical space. So I feel like because if you look at us, so we're going off topic a little bit, but this is interesting. If you look at the symbol for God, it is a circle with a dot. If you look at each chakra and imagine that each energy center has a core, which is a dot, so it's a circle with a dot. And in the center of your third eye, you have, if you see the chakra as a circle with a dot, and that dot is right in the center of the space where we are connecting with that channel of information, and that center is the access point to the information. My sense is, and this is, I'm bringing this into fruition as I'm talking, so I think I'm channeling some stuff through. So basically, the center is the access point of the information, but in order to access the information, you have to go into your heart first to be able to get access to the information. So it's like it's a portal that opens to take you into that space, to take you out.
Because if when you go into your heart, that is like the quickest way to access. I always say core you. It's the only way I describe it. It's like you without all the crap, like the humanness. And so when you access that, it's then becomes more you can access, because you've come here and it takes you out of the mind and just the physical body.
Yeah exactly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's sometimes hard from that human perspective to try to really understand that, but the more practicing it, the more you sense it, you can sense it and feel it.
It's a sense,
Um,
isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's also a knowingness that it's actually there's the trans the oh, what's the word? It's like it's the transmitter is through the heart, but actually the uh, translator, not the translator. I'm trying to find the right word for it, but it's the information is basically taken through and understood through the third eye to give us the information.
Yeah.
So it's a go through the access point, but it's given to you as information through that space. It's where we understand it.
And the whole in the spiritual world of unblocking the third eye, decalcifying the third eye, do you think that has anything to do with it? I feel like I'm asking you questions now, but like I feel like you're in a space of
I feel like I'm thinking, oh, I don't know. And so I suppose I have a perspective on all of this, which is that we can do anything with our physical bodies by intention and belief. And I do think there is a part of it. And I think that if that is your belief system, then yes, absolutely, you could decalcify your third eye and etc. etc. And of course, it's going to help. But I also feel like with conscious intent, knowing that every part of us is actually space, 99.9999999% of us is space. So therefore, there is nothing that is physical that we cannot change by intention and belief. And so therefore, if we want to decalcify our third eye and we have that total belief that we have the capacity to change that because it isn't fixed, it's all about the particle and the wave. And so if we're more wave than particle, there's more of us that is quantum than is fixed. And therefore, anything can be changed in the quantum. And if that part of our mind is the quantum, then from that space, we can change anything.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say even before I asked you the question. It all comes down to belief. It really does. Even the things we're talking about now, what gives it truth, what makes it your reality so you can actually kind of gain the benefits from that is belief. Like we talk about these things and to us it feels like this is our reality, but to someone else it's completely not, and then so they're not tapping into that reality, so then the things that we find we get benefits from and support us, we can't automatically go, here you go, you have this, because that person has to believe it for it to give it power. And that's just how powerful is that? Just knowing our belief, how much that changes everything. That makes us feel empowered. I always think when you know that the power that you have is changing your beliefs. What beliefs do you want? You have that choice to then create anything, to tap into anything.
And that's my absolute belief, is that we can. I also, knowing this, is that our subconscious programming, despite what we want to believe, can sometimes be misaligned with our beliefs. So our beliefs can have misalignment that we're holding in the body. So unless we align ourselves, even if we believe that, because I fully believe that's true, but there are parts of me that don't hold that belief. So it's
pulling against each other.
They pull against each other. And so the more that we identify those blocks to the expansiveness and alignment, the more we come into alignment, the more we're losing those limiting beliefs, the more that we can then manifest and create exactly what we want, including our physical health, including our abundance, whatever it is we want to achieve in our lives, physical, mental, emotional. As long as we are aligned with ourselves, we can do it. But it's those limiting beliefs that, even though, because our conscious mind can believe one thing and our unconscious can be completely fighting against us. And if that's the case, it doesn't matter how many times that we believe that we want to do something, we're going to keep on having that sabotage is going to come in completely unconsciously, because the message we're sending out to the universe is the unconscious messaging. Even though consciously we believe one thing, we're sending out an unconscious message, which is contradicting that belief system.
So that's if you're ignoring the body, say if you want to bring in more light and feel lighter, but actually you're filling your body with density and toxins and heavy emotions, you're even though
Yeah.
you're doing the opposite thing. So actually is the action of what we're doing as well to feel that. Yeah.
Why affirmations on their own don't really do it. My perspective is that affirmations without other work are just,
Mm.
it's not doing nothing, but it's not anywhere near as powerful if you're in alignment with it. Because if you're saying an affirmation and there's a part of you that actually doesn't believe that affirmation, it's not sending out the signals to the universe that are actually affirming what you're saying. You've got those two parts of you, and your subconscious is actually 90% of who you are.
Mm.
Your conscious mind is only about 10%. So
Wow.
what the universe is hearing is your subconscious, not your conscious mind.
Yeah, wow. It's so true. I've never really resonated with affirmations as in like, oh, this is an affirmation. Let me read that. I think affirmations serve as a purpose. You can look at that and be like, huh, what do I feel that at all? Do I feel that
Exactly.
in my
Yes.
body? Okay, let me play around with that. But I would say gratitude, I suppose different from affirmations. That's the one thing where I use the term fake it before you make it. Because I've done this
Yes.
practice of I would wake up and I was, in that anxiety, and again, my intuition, my higher self was like, gratitude, you need to practice gratitude. So I was like, okay, we're going to do this every day. And I would sit and look out of the window. I don't know why, I would just connect to nature, a tree. And a lot of time I would look, and you start with observation. That's, if you don't feel like gratitude, just observing. And I suppose you're then bringing in that mindfulness and just observing, oh, a tree, nature. But then after a while, I remember then waking up and I just had this feeling like I've never had this feeling before. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And it was that gratitude of like, wow, thank you to nature. Thank you for this treat. Like, thank you that I'm here. And it just happened. But I suppose it's all the things I was doing around that. It's not the one thing I did. I was also doing like cacao ceremonies and breath work and all the things that contributed. But we can be committed with our intention to something. And even if it doesn't feel right, you're not quite believing it, you can continue
There's
with
definitely, I know a big part of my journey was fake it till you make it.
it.
Because we've talked about, for those of you who are listening that remember Mr. Ben, it's something I've talked about before, where he used to be this cartoon character, and I used to love it. I was so very young when I used to watch it, and he used to go into a shop, and it was a fancy dress shop, and he would choose an outfit, and then he would go out the back door of the dressing room and go into the world where his outfit would enable him to experience, whether it was he would have like an Indian headdress, or he'd have a space suit, or he'd be a cowboy, or whatever it was, but he'd go and have an adventure. And I've always felt that one of the things I used to do when I was a child, where I was always very shy and used to find any sort of confrontation difficult, because I was always a bit I was never one of the popular kids at school. I was always sort of sidelined, a bit marginalized, didn't really feel like I fitted in. And so I would always feel that I would want to be a certain way, or a certain situation would come up, and I would be thinking, well, who would deal with that situation? Who would be really good at handling that? And I would sort of almost, I probably would unconsciously at the time, but I was probably tuning into their energy, and I would tune into that energy, and I would feel like, okay, that's how they would, and I would sort of in my mind act how they would, I knew they would act doing that thing, and I knew that that person wouldn't have a problem with doing that thing, and so I would almost wear that outfit so that became comfortable, and then I would do it, and it made it more comfortable for me to do it, because I wasn't having to be me anymore. I was in somebody else's outfit, which felt more comfortable to do that. So it really was that fake it till you make it. And I think gratitude is a huge thing, because gratitude we feel in our bodies. Every cell of our body feels gratitude. So even if we're just saying something like, I am enough, I am amazing, I am beautiful, if we don't believe it, we're not really, we don't feel that. There's a real resistance to those things if we're not in alignment to them.
Yeah.
But we can always find things to be grateful for. There are always things. And when we feel that, it is a truth that we're resonating with. So we can always look at nature and be grateful for how beautiful the sunset is, or how lovely that flower is, or a memory of something that made us happy can always bring up an emotion of gratitude. And then we go into the heart space, and then we're connecting into those higher parts of ourselves. And
Yeah.
it's that feeling of acceptance, compassion, gratitude, unconditional love. And it's that emotion that we're tapping into, which floods our body with different chemicals. So again, it might be that we're thinking it, but it's actually bringing up a physical reaction in our body that changes the biochemistry.
Mm. Yeah, and kind of going on from that, it just made me think about the work that we're doing together, with the breathwork and light language sessions, on how, you know, some people can just be really stuck with a certain belief,
Mm.
and what we're discovering is sometimes it runs so deep, doesn't it?
Mm.
These programmings, and that's why we're going to be doing a lot more sessions coming up with people, and I'm working on that, because I'm thinking about, you know, the people working with it, it's a certain belief that they're still holding, that it's been really hard to break through. And
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And and we've all either got them or have had them. And there's um I believe that the circumstances, totally believe that the circumstances that we're born into, we're choosing to give us the ingredients for us to break down those barriers to connect with more of who we are. But it's a process. And so, and there's always that breakthrough. There's that one. It's like if you think about us a bit like being on some sort of a computer program, and if you think about how it is, and we go through levels, and you do level one, which is quite easy, and you've just got Mario going along, and you've got a couple of little things jumping out, and you get to the end and go, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then as we go through the levels, it gets harder and harder until eventually we're meeting the big boss at the end. And then and then suddenly it's like, doesn't matter how we get on now, whatever we do, we are going to have to face this, because nothing in my life is going to get past. I can't bring anything else in my life into fruition until I literally face this, because it's got so big. And I think we all have those moments where we have to face that really scary thing, that really scary thing that is, and there's quite a lot of different ones around it, but there's usually that one breakthrough moment where once we can just get past that, then everything else starts to come up behind it. It's almost like a cork popping on a champagne bottle, and it's like once you've done that, other stuff starts to come up behind it that has been connected to it. But once you've broken through, it's so much easier. But that first point of resistance is the hardest.
yeah,
It's
I
hard to
would
break.
say that then, like, you know, if you feel like, you know, I think we were talking with and you're resonating with, and you kind of gone on that journey and you're still stuck with the belief, just knowing that sometimes we need other people to mirror this to us and to see something that we just are not seeing, probably because we have such a huge protector part, and this belief is keeping us so safe, and it has maybe for lifetimes and life, you know, and so that's why we can just know that there's help and there's support out there to go deeper with these things, and we're seeing the amazing work that we can do, and that we're doing together. So it's super exciting that it's what's the word, limitless of, you know, how we can expand and grow, and, you know, we can support each other. And I really feel like we are here to all support each other. I think all the things that we're tapping into, our gifts, it's like we're here to just help each other on this journey. And I know it sounds
Mm.
so cheesy, but it's actually just so true.
It is, and even it doesn't matter what scenario, what role you're playing. We're all learning from each other in every moment. Whether you're the person who's triggering the other person, we're learning something from that. Whether you're the teacher, or whether you're the healer, or whether you're the student, or the person who's come for a session, we are all learning from each other. And every session I do, I learn something about myself from that session. So it's all about us doing different things, and we all hold different spaces at different times. So sometimes I can be the healer, and sometimes I can be the person that's being healed. It doesn't matter which role I'm playing, I'm learning something every single time. And
Mm.
the it was really shown to me, something that was, I think, is really important to notice, is that going back to the physical body and how important that is that when I first started on this journey, I was always about healing the mind. Everything was about healing the mind, and I did so much work healing my mind. But I forgot about the body. I forgot about how much we hold on a cellular level. It wasn't really something that had come to my attention. So my path had always been about understanding the mind and actually the spiritual connection. And the body has always been something I disconnected with. And I'm working on that now. I've held a lot of shame. I've held a lot of guilt. I've held a lot of um, discomfort around how my body looked and how it felt, and all sorts of different things that I hadn't really addressed. And I'm still on that journey now, and Jade is helping me through that process. But what was really interesting to me was that, and this is something that's I think is really important to understand about the unconscious mind, is that up and about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was finding that I was really not in a good place mentally. I was finding my energy very up and down. I was either really happy, or I was having days where I was waking up and feeling really low. And I was thinking, what is all that about? And I've had this tendency to keep running at everything and running at everything. And there has been quite a lot of trauma, and there's been narcissistic relationships, all those sort of things that come in that we don't want to attract again. And we'll come back to that in a couple of moments, because we touch on that. And we digressed a bit. But what was really interesting was that I was thinking that there something going on neurologically. That was I sort of showing symptoms of bipolar? Was there something going on like that? And I said to Jay, could you do a breathwork session for me? Because I felt like it was becoming quite intense. And Jay did the breathwork session for me, and the relief that I felt was enormous. And immediately my mindset shifted. And I've been completely, not so completely imbalanced, but that whole up and down completely stopped. So what that really showed me and proved, that doesn't matter how much work you do with just the mind, if you're not clearing it from a cellular level in your body, you're still going to be having negative impact from that.
Yeah.
So you have to working with the breath, understanding, listening to your body, whether it's yoga, whatever it is that you do, dance, it doesn't matter what those things are, but as you're healing the mind, also work on the body at the same time, because otherwise you're only looking at part of the equation.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like, and we do these things. I mean, so I because I know the results of that and the shifts, that's what I've had the ability to keep going on the journey with the body, and that's why I do this as a living now. But I witness that in people where they have the shifts in the breath work, and they have so much space, and their mindset completely changes. But then they might go home and kind of ignore then the body again. And so just knowing as well, it's like the daily actions of how you're interacting with your body. You know, breath work is a beautiful way. It's like such a shift of that, but it is everything. You know, how we do one thing is how we do everything, right? It's like how we're treating our body and how we're interacting and what we're doing. And I made that point, but you get the point. It's so true.
It totally is. And having been somebody who's been always a little bit body resistant, the breath work has really enabled me just to drop into that space and feel more grounded, more present, and just generally more comfortable in my own body now, because I've been holding so much trauma in my physical body that I'd become almost like I was dragging it around with me. And it was feeling very heavy, and not just physically heavy because of weight. It was more an energetic heaviness of the trauma that was being held, and that has shifted.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to do the work together.
And I always kind of say, I imagine it like the crew members, that once your conscious mind start to take these actions, looking after your body and regulating and, you know, all those wonderful things, it's like the crew member subconscious goes, oh, they have got this. They are keeping me safe. Okay. So then they can go, okay, we can relax a little bit more now. And, you know, there's not this uncomfortable feeling in my body, and it all works in harmony with each other. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is where we're moving on to relationships. A really important thing is that, and it's not just about relationships or narcissistic relationships. If you've had toxic relationships, it's about anything that you want to manifest in your life is only going to be manifested at the resonance that you're sending out. So if you have previously attracted negative relationships, or you've attracted, and that could be whether it's romantic relationships, friendships, work relationships, if you keep on attracting a pattern of that, it will be because there's the limiting belief that you are attracting that energy. And there's something within you that is actually is repeating, that is calling that into you. So unless you do the work on changing those limiting beliefs, shifting the programming, you're just going to get the same thing show up in a different way. And as always happens with the universe, if we don't shift and change those beliefs and we don't act on them, the message gets stronger and louder. So the situation will become the next time more toxic, and it will be a more difficult situation, and you'll find it more difficult to step away from it because you haven't taken the actions to shift it. So, and that's just how it seems to work, is that if we don't listen, it gets louder.
Yeah, so putting the energy into that belief, we're putting more, like, because and it becomes louder and louder and louder. It becomes more of your reality. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's so important that, so it's, I think, maybe to leave this conversation with, just notice where in your life you're attracting things that you don't want.
Mm.
because those are the things where you really need to look at your subconscious beliefs around what do you deserve, what are you holding, what are the belief system that you're holding in terms of relationships. Do you feel deserving of a loving relationship? Do you love yourself? Do you deserve to be honored, nurtured, treated beautifully? Do you honor being spoiled? Do you honor that within yourself? Because if you don't, you'll attract the exact thing that you believe about yourself is what you're attracting in a relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you don't value yourself within your work, and you feel that you're or a people pleaser in terms of the fact that I'm only going to be hired at this job if I can prove how hard I work and how indispensable I am, you're going to attract a job that's going to make sure that you're working really,
Always
really hard
working
and
hard.
nobody puts on you. So it's like really be aware of those thoughts and what you believe about yourself, because what you believe is what you're going to get.
That's why
So
even work being like work gets to be, you know, easy. It gets to be in flow. We get to do it with grace. Like even me, it's a belief that I've had because it's just what I grew up with. Where to earn money is really hard. Even if you try and you put effort in, you might still not earn it. And that's kind of belief that I've taken. Like I have to work so hard to to live, to be abundant. And that's one that I'm trying to break out. Like how, you know, does this get to be just easy and fun? You know, it's like those big dreams of like, oh, I can just show up and be enjoying life, and I also be abundant. Like that's like a huge belief where it seems like, really, wow, that'd be amazing. But
but we
yeah.
can see as we're working more together that it comes into that alignment, because when you're working with your passion, whatever you're doing from your heart and from your passion,
Mhm.
everything starts to move around it, and to the universe wants you to do that. It wants you to be aligned with your highest truth. And so the minute that you start to connect with your passion, you start to work in your passion, then things will start to happen around it. And it's not that it happens overnight and you start to think, well, I want to do that, so therefore now I'm going to be immediately abundant, because there are still blocks to that. There are blocks to, and we were talking about this earlier about having, it was a dream I had last night and something I saw yesterday, around merging timelines. And if we think that we've got one ultimate best timeline that is the way that we can play out everything, if we are completely aligned and we are really stepping into our truth, our passion, our total alignment to our highest timeline in this lifetime, um, that is going to be held, supported, in flow, and abundant in every moment that we live. But what we have is all of our limiting beliefs creating all of these different possible timelines, because unless we are completely aligned, we have all these different possible timelines, which are not our optimum timeline. And so, but it was a dream that I had last night, so I may as well share it now because it's quite relevant to this, is that what I was seeing is all these different lanes and people, it was all to do with a university and somebody being really put down. And I felt really affronted for this person. So I decided to take their place in this timeline. And there was the dean of this university was sitting at the front, and he was sitting in a desk where he was looking over everybody and really sort of imposing his power and making everybody feel belittled. And he was like this scary, seemed everybody was very scared of him and wanting to really um and really being quite subservient to him, and that nobody wanted to confront him. Whatever he said, they were taking on as a truth. And I decided I was so affronted for this person that I was going to go up to this person, and I stood over his desk rather than sitting down in the chair in front of me. So I was smaller, and I felt like a giant over the top of it. So I was really sort of overreaching him, and it was about me stepping. It was about me stepping into that fear, confronting that fear, and not seeing it as bigger than me. And so when I did that, it diminished, and
Mm.
I came back, and then I was able to step into a different space and open up the possibility for the other people in those to realize that they didn't actually have to be scared of him, because he wasn't actually that scary. And so if we think about that as our limiting beliefs, those are our the parts of us that we are scared to confront, those parts of us that feel too. So when we have an emotion that comes up that we just don't want to go there, it's just too difficult, it actually really isn't. It's just that we have this belief that it is, and it feels uncomfortable and it feels scary. But it's when we actually step up and we just look it in the eye,
Mm.
and at that point it will diminish.
I had last night. Now you're saying that, because I had a really strange sleep last night as well, and that's what the kind of feeling. There was like this. I used to have night terrors when I was younger, and it was kind of that feeling where something negative was happening around me, and I had the choice to be in my usual fear because it's nighttime, like all these things. But again, I was like, no, I choose to believe that I can feel really light and relaxed and feel love right now. And so I just stepped into that belief, and then again that fear just dissolves, and I go, oh, okay, there was nothing actually there. There was nothing there. Like I just needed to project that, like, I'm not feeling fearful. I'm open, I'm okay, I'm safe, I feel love, and then it goes. And that's actually how I got rid of night terrors, actually. It was, and that was in my early 20s. That really was when someone, I worked with an energy mentor, and they kind of helped me understand that, and it actually worked, because I was still having like terrors where you're just absolutely frozen and you can't move your body. Send it love, believe that there's nothing to fear, and dissolves.
And I think that's the most important thing, is just know that anything that we're feeling, it's an illusion from a perspective that we've created. It all comes from that trauma response, that programming, but it's all an illusion. It isn't a truth. And so when we know that it's an illusion, then we can face it. And when we face it and we know that we're stronger than it, and whether that's because we're coming from that just in a space of, everybody will feel it in a slightly different way according to what works for them. And sometimes that can be a feeling of just empowerment and strength, and sometimes it can be unconditional love and dissolving it. It depends on what works for you, and everybody will find their own way. But it's that knowingness that actually it's not actually a truth, it's a perception. And once you know that, and the fear just starts to, it just falls away. And then what happens at the same time is that timeline that would have taken you down that less optimum path closes down as well.
That
So that we
belief
become, the
goes.
belief goes, so we're more closely aligned to that higher timeline. So we're collapsing timelines. Every single time we're collapsing timelines. And those timelines we're collapsing are not just collapsing in a way where we're coming to the middle, we're also collapsing it, going into a more vertical timeline. So we're collapsing it into a higher frequency timeline.
And that's why it's important to hang around. I mean, be around people that can even challenge those things with you. Sandra, all the people at Blue Pool, like all the people that I'm surrounded with, that I can have these honest conversations with, even beliefs that do feel negative, and people with higher perspectives and can see the truth more than you can. And the same thing, it's like that fear that you have, they can shine that light on it, and that empowerment to assist you. And it's so important to have those people around you that can help you do that as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
okay, I think this has been a
fascinating
long
conversation.
one.
A long conversation.
Okay.
Really, really interesting. No, it's been a great conversation today, and it's taken us down lots of different paths that have been really quite expansive, and helps us to really understand it from so many different perspectives. And as always, it's about taking what resonates. It's about your personal truth. It's not about what our experience is. What we're doing is sharing with you our perspectives, so that you can then tap into that and understand what feels right for you, so that you can empower yourselves into your own perspective and your own higher truth. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you, Jade. I've enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, me too. And next week we're going to be talking more on the physical, about detoxing, cleansing. I mean, and we'll go into the energetics as always as well in those topics, but that's going to be the general topic, is detoxing, cleansing.
Yes, exactly. So have a wonderful week, everybody. Be aware of your patterns and your responses, and just notice where you're holding them. And as always, if there's anything we can do to help, then please reach out. We are offering some amazing, we've now started working together and offering one-to-ones as a joint package. So if you want to work with Jade with the breath work on independently, if you want to work with light codes, then obviously please reach out to us. And if you would like a session with both of us, that's also an option now as well. So it'd be lovely to hear from you. It's lovely to hear your perspective. So please comment and let us know what your thoughts are about anything we've talked about today. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye for now.